But what if the line between the US and Canada wasn't forever? What if some parts of America felt tired, unheard, or just didn't want to stay anymore? Sounds crazy, right? Like something out of a movie or a weird internet theory. But here's the shocking part. It's not just a wild idea. In some places across the United States, people are seriously talking about leaving and looking north. Yes, real groups, real plans. Some states feel closer to Canada than to Washington, D.C. in how they live, how they think, and who they trade with. For them, staying in the U.S. feels less like home and more like being stuck. The sad part. So what started as a whisper has become a quiet movement. And when you see the facts, you'll realize this isn't just talk. It's a warning. Maybe, just maybe, one day they really will leave. Number 10. Vermont. Vermont isn't just another U.S. state. It feels like a quiet dream that refuses to be like the rest. It's not loud. It's not rushing to get rich or gain power. Vermont is peaceful, green, and deeply proud of being different. And here's the shocking part. Once upon a time, Vermont wasn't even part of the United States. Before 1791, it was its own country, printing its own money and running its own government. Most people have forgotten this, but not the people of Vermont. That proud spirit never really died. Today, Vermont feels more Canadian than American. They care a lot about social programs, fairness, and the environment. Their politics lean far left, quiet, caring, and full of maple syrup charm. But here's where it gets serious. There's actually a group called the Second Vermont Republic. They want Vermont to leave the United States, not as a joke, but for real. They believe Vermont gets little help from Washington and would do better on its own or even joining Canada. Some towns in Vermont speak French. They trade a lot with Quebec, their culture, their values. They're closer to Canada than Texas or Florida. And if one day America faces big trouble, like economic collapse or political chaos, Vermont might not stick around to see what happens. They're proud, prepared, and already halfway out the door. It's not just a state. It's a quiet rebellion waiting for the right moment. Number 9, Maine. Maine has always felt far away. Not just in distance, but in heart. It's like the forgotten corner of America, cold, quiet, strong. It's the last place the sun touches before it leaves the East Coast. But here's the shocking truth. Without Canada, Maine might not even work. That's not a joke, it's real. Maine depends on Quebec to survive. During freezing winters, it's Canadian electricity that keeps homes warm, factories running, and the lights on. If Quebec ever stopped sending power, Maine would go dark. And it's not just the power, it's everything. Over $3 billion in trade flows between Maine and Canada every year. Goods, workers, services. If that stopped, Maine's economy would break like thin ice on a frozen lake. And the people? They don't feel like folks from Texas or California. The fishing towns here look just like Nova Scotia's. Some families cross the border so often it feels invisible. French isn't rare here, it's part of their roots. Maine fits Canada like a puzzle piece that was always meant to be there. Even politically, Maine is more quiet and caring, focused on local help, not big national drama. It doesn't want the spotlight, it just wants to protect its people and get by. Washington often ignores it. But Canada? Canada is right next door, offering power, trade, and connection. Once, Maine broke away from Massachusetts. Could it break away again? What if one day Maine looks north and says, "That's where we belong"? Number 8, Minnesota. Snow covers everything. The lakes seem to go on forever. The way people talk, it sounds a little Canadian. This isn't just the Midwest, it feels like Canada. Minnesota touches over 500 miles of the Canadian border. Billions of dollars worth of goods cross between them every year. Families live on both sides. Cultures mix together like warm soup on a freezing day. People here are kind, strong, and deeply in love with nature. Hockey isn't just a game, it's part of their soul. Winters are long and harsh, but people don't just survive them, they celebrate them. Minnesota's politics? They lean progressive. Just like many Canadian provinces, they care about health, the environment, and community. Long ago, parts of Minnesota were under British control. The fur trade tied them to Canada. And even now, some people hold dual citizenship. If things ever fall apart in America, if chaos or collapse hit, Minnesota might quietly look north. Why? Because it already feels halfway there. Number 7, New Hampshire, live free or die. Those aren't just words in New Hampshire, they're a way of life. People here don't like being told what to do. They don't pay income tax, they don't pay sales tax, and they don't want the government interfering in their lives. These folks are tough. They hunt, grow their own food, fix what's broken, and believe in doing things themselves. But here's the shocking part. In 2022, lawmakers in New Hampshire brought up an idea that left people speechless. They actually proposed a vote to leave the United States. It didn't pass, but the fact that it made it to the State House, that says a lot. It means people are seriously thinking about walking away because New Hampshire is already tied to Canada in many ways. They trade over $8 billion every year. Canadian companies work here. Borders don't feel so solid anymore. And when you walk through New Hampshire's snow-covered towns, it feels more like New Brunswick than New York. And there's more, the Free State Project. A real movement where people move here just to escape government control. Thousands want to build a place where Washington has no power at all. It sounds small at first, but when enough people believe they don't need the US anymore, the question gets louder: what if we left? What if New Hampshire said goodbye to the past and looked north for its future? What if that future felt a lot like Canada? Number 6, North Dakota, wide open lands. Big skies that seem to never end. North Dakota is quiet, often forgotten, but there's a hidden truth here. This state is deeply tied to Canada in ways most people don't see. North Dakota sends billions of dollars in goods to Canada every year. Farms, oil fields, and factories all rely on that northern neighbor. Even electricity crosses the border, keeping homes warm when winter gets brutal. People travel back and forth easily for shopping, work, or even healthcare. Canada isn't just a neighbor, it's a lifeline. Politically, North Dakota feels a lot like Alberta. They both believe in small government, strong personal freedom, and practical money decisions. Years ago, there was even talk of joining economies with Manitoba. It didn't happen, but maybe someday it could. Number 5, Washington. Washington is a place where modern life and nature live side by side. Big tech cities, cozy coffee shops, and huge evergreen forests shape this state's soul. But what many don't realize is how closely Washington is tied to Canada. Canada is Washington's biggest trading partner. Every year, billions of dollars worth of goods move between them. Seattle and Vancouver are like twin cities. Their economies are deeply linked. There's even talk of a high-speed train connecting them. Power from British Columbia keeps the lights on in Washington homes and businesses. The two places share more than just trade. Politically, Washington thinks a lot like Canada, caring about healthcare, clean air, and fairness for all. People love the outdoors, protect the environment, and value diversity on both sides. If America ever breaks apart or falls into chaos, Washington might not look east for help. It might look north, where things already feel familiar. Number 4, Montana. Montana is wild, free, and full of open space. With its rugged mountains and big skies, it often feels more like its own country than just another US state. It shares borders with not one, but 3 Canadian provinces, and the connection is stronger than many think. Trade flows freely here. Goods, services, even people move across the border with ease. The way of life, hunting, fishing, ranching, feels almost identical to Canada's western provinces. Winters are brutal, but Montanans are tough, just like their neighbors to the north. Long ago, Canadian fur companies controlled trade in this land. Even today, some families have relatives on both sides of the border. Some people even joke Montana is just southern Alberta. But that joke hides something real. Many in Montana feel forgotten by Washington. They want freedom, local control, and values that match their lifestyle. If the US ever faced serious trouble, would Montana turn to Canada for answers? Number 3, Oregon. Oregon feels like it doesn't belong, not just with Washington, D.C., but even with the rest of America. It's always done things its own way, but lately, that way seems a lot more like Vancouver's. The economy is tightly connected to Canada, with over $4 billion in trade crossing the border every year. But it's not just about money. Oregon and British Columbia share values, things like green energy, universal health care, labor rights. It's more than just politics, it's who they are. Portland and Vancouver feel like twins, both artsy, progressive, and deeply passionate about the planet and its people. But there's a tension in Oregon. The state is torn between the urban west and the rural east. Some people even want to leave, wanting to join Idaho. But here's the twist. While some want to go east, others are looking north to Canada. Canada feels stable, kinder, and more aligned with their values. For a state that always seems to be at odds with the federal government, the idea of breaking away doesn't feel so crazy. Some people have already whispered it. What if we left? What if we found somewhere we truly belong? Number 2, Alaska. Alaska, often called the last frontier, may not always feel like it's part of the United States. It's already so far away, physically separated by thousands of miles and vast wilderness. The only road connecting it to the mainland goes straight through Canada. Geographically, it's closer to British Columbia and the Yukon than any other American state. But it's not just about distance. Economically, Alaska and Canada are tied together in ways people don't often realize. Oil, seafood, timber. Canadian companies hold large shares in Alaska's resources, and trade between them is constant. Some of Alaska's biggest fisheries rely on Canadian waters, and the mining industry is deeply connected. Then there's the military. Alaska hosts some of America's most important bases, but defense isn't just American, it's shared. The North American Aerospace Defense Command is a joint effort, with Canadian and American forces working side by side. If things ever go wrong, they already know how to collaborate. Alaska used to belong to Russia, and that's not just an interesting fact, it shows that Alaska's identity has never been fixed. It's changed before, and it could change again. Culturally, Alaska is wild, independent, and self-reliant, but it shares that same grit with Canada's northern territories. Some Alaskans feel forgotten, not part of the national conversation. So, what if they made a change? What if they looked north for a future with a partner who truly understands them? Number 1, Michigan. This idea might be the most shocking, but it actually makes a lot of sense. Michigan is already so closely connected to Canada that if that link were broken, it could fall apart. Every year, $80 billion worth of trade flows between them. That's not just impressive, it's essential. Cars, steel, electronics, agriculture, thousands of trucks cross the Detroit-Windsor border every single day. Without this connection, Michigan's economy would collapse. Then there's the auto industry, which is Detroit's heart and soul. But that heart doesn't just stay in Michigan, it beats across the border. Factories in Michigan and Ontario work together, sending parts back and forth. Sometimes a single car crosses the border 5 times before it's complete. This kind of system only works because there's trust and cooperation between both sides. And don't forget about infrastructure, bridges, tunnels, pipelines, and even electricity. Michigan gets some of its power from Ontario. The wildest part? Michigan once thought about joining Canada back after the Toledo War in the 1800s. Some people were so fed up they actually considered it. It never happened, but the idea never really went away. Today, when Michigan feels like it's already living like a Canadian province, some might wonder, why not just make it official? Could these states really break away and join Canada? At first, it sounds like something from a strange story or a funny debate online, but the facts are real. Vermont is already dreaming of independence, Maine depends on Quebec, New Hampshire wants more freedom, Minnesota shares a lot with Canada, North Dakota is tied to the north, Montana feels forgotten, Washington works closely with British Columbia, Oregon is searching for a new identity, Alaska is closer to Canada than the rest of the US. These states aren't just connected to Canada, they're dependent on it. These bonds feel stronger than the border between them. If the US ever faces a breakdown, politically, economically, or socially, some of these states might just ask, why stay in a system that doesn't work? Why not go somewhere that already feels like home? Drop your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this. Your experiences might help someone else make the right decision.